Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Dementia Diaries, a caregiver's journey. Tonight, I'm going to be talking with Stephanie, and she's going to be telling us a story about her mother, Josefina. Please welcome Stephanie.
Hi,
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. So
Good.
tell me something about yourself.
I am Stephanie Marroquin. I am 32. I'm a single mother of a 12-year-old boy. He's awesome. I love him. He's a blessing in disguise. I live with my parents. I help take care of both of them, but it's more of it's I don't know how to explain it. It's easier, I feel like, to just live with your parents when they need help, so that you're here all the time. Um, I am a full-time student also. I'm going to school for mortuary science, so I'm pursuing my embalming and funeral directing licenses, on top of whatever else that's going on. Other than that, I'm just here. I live in Missouri, Carthage, Missouri. Little
Oh,
bitty town in the middle of nowhere.
so let's talk about your mom. When was she diagnosed, and what type of dementia does she have?
So she has Alzheimer's dementia,
Mhm.
but we didn't actually get the full diagnosis on my mom until like 2 years ago. When everything started with my mom, it was really weird. Everything that I've ever known about dementia or Alzheimer's has been that it's more of a gradual change. Like you start to notice that they forget to turn things off and they start to forget things and, stuff like that. But with her, it was more of a very sudden from night to day situation. I remember that morning I had gone to work and everything seemed fine at home. And then I got a phone call a couple hours later from my siblings asking me to come home because we needed to have a meeting. We were having an emergency at home. I got here and my mom was acting completely different than normal. Like she was laughing about everything. She was saying things that didn't make any sense.
Mhm.
She was, it was a lot. It was completely different. She was accusing people of doing things that were just kind of like, so it was just kind of weird to us where it just came out of nowhere with her.
So how did you and your siblings handle that?
So at first we weren't sure what was going on. I'm not gonna lie to you. We had seen a little glass of a drink, like a tequila, and
Mhm.
so we thought maybe mom's decided to have a drink today. That wasn't the case. She didn't have any alcohol in her system. Then we thought, maybe she's just extremely stressed, or maybe something happened that we don't know, or we weren't sure. So for a while there, we just kind of, and when I say a while, that day particularly, we just kind of went with the flow to see what we could do to help her get a little
Mhm.
bit of clarity on her day, to see what was going on. After that first day, the next day, everything seemed normal. She acted like everything was fine. She was acting like herself, went to church, did everything normal. And then that Monday is whenever everything went crazy again. She had been trying to get into the neighbors' houses, into their cars. She was just running up and down the street looking for places to go. And that's when we were like, there's something going on that we don't know.
And so how many siblings do you have?
I have three siblings.
Okay.
I have
And
two older brothers and one older sister.
so do all of you take care of your mother? Is there
Yes.
one primary
So
caregiver?
I would consider myself or my dad the primary. My dad's here all the time.
Okay.
Um, I'm here, I live here, but I mean, I still have to go to work and, things like that. But I guess I would consider my dad the primary. He makes sure that she gets her food and her meds and gets her shower taken and, all the good stuff. I'm usually more helpful whenever it's time to get her out of the house. Like if we need to get her to a doctor's appointment or if she needs to go get a haircut. She doesn't like leaving the house like at all anymore. So it really takes a lot of convincing to get her out. So that's where I come into play most of the time.
So what does she do? So if you all want to take her out, say, let's go shopping, let's go get a haircut. What kind of things does she say?
So she doesn't normally say anything other than no, I'm not going. I've started describing her as my teenager. She'll just kind of lay there. She'll cover herself up with her blankets. She'll hide her shoes. She won't. She doesn't want to get out of bed. So if we have an outing that we know we've planned on, like if we want to take her to church on Sunday, and we know that this Sunday we want to try and take her to church, then we'll start preparing her on Saturday, and we'll be like, hey, just so you know, tomorrow we will be leaving the house at this time. And then, the day of, it usually takes a good hour and a half prep time to get her actually out of the house.
Okay. So, and how long has she been diagnosed again? How long has she had?
So she's been her official diagnosis has been since 2021, like January of 2021. This all started back in 2017. And when it started, the way that it started, I was not convinced myself that it was dementia. I was having a hard time coping with it, agreeing with it, accepting it. I felt like my mom was way too young and that it happened way too sudden for it to be dementia.
And if you don't mind, how old is your mother?
She's 40 years older than me. I'm 32, so she's 72 now.
Okay.
But it started in 2017. So how long ago is that? Like 8 years ago? No, it hasn't been 8 years. It's been 6 years. 6 years. Sorry. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, she was only like 66 when it happened. And I mean, I guess that does sound older, but I don't know. In my brain, it didn't feel like my mom was old enough to have that kind of an issue yet.
And so how did you, when you said that you couldn't cope with it, what would happen? I mean, explain that. What would you do? What would you say?
So like my mom was the life of the party. She was always loud. She was that auntie in the back that's like screaming and yelling her head off while she's telling gossipy stories all the time. She's on the phone with her friend from California or my cousin in Mexico, like talking, gossiping just all the time. Either a friend, there was always people here like visiting her, it just all the time. She was always being social. She was a very social person. And whenever this happened, her personality completely changed. It like plummeted. It went from being this super social butterfly to this cocooned butterfly that didn't want to get out of bed anymore. And it wasn't my mom. It just felt weird that part of my mom was gone.
Yeah. And I understand that because, you're used to your mom being one way, and then you see her this way. It's like, oh my goodness, it's it takes your breath away. So now, as we are up today, where is she in the bed mainly? Does she walk around?
So her routine is usually like, she gets up around 9, 10-ish. She'll have her fruit. She usually eats papaya every morning because it helps with the digestive system, by the way. And then she'll have some kind of either like if it's a day that she's hungry, she'll have some pancakes, whatever. Then she'll go back and lay down for a while. And then she'll get up around noonish and have lunch, sit and watch TV for a little while. I don't know that she's actually paying attention to the television, but she sits there and, observes for at least a couple hours. And then she'll get up and go lay down again. And every once in a while, I can convince her to come back out and sit in the living room for a while. Sometimes, depending on the weather, like if it's freezing cold outside, she's not getting out of bed and I'm not going to blame her for it. But most of the time, she's got her routine to where she's up at a certain time, eating at a certain time, and laying back down at a certain time. You know what I mean?
Now, does your father have to help her up, or is she at the point still where she knows to get up? And
so she can she can maneuver everything on her own. It's just a little slower now.
Right.
It's yeah, that's it. And she uses a walker to get around, and that took a while to get her to do, because she was like, I don't need a walker. I don't need that. She told the doctor he was crazy because she didn't need a walker.
Yeah, I understand that.
So, I mean, it took us a while to convince her to just use it, because there were a couple of times that we were like, hey, you're going to fall over. So maybe.
Yeah. So how does your siblings come into play? So we know your father is the primary caregiver.
Yes.
Where do you come into play, and how do your siblings come into play? Do you all take turns,
Yeah, we
or,
take turns doing what needs to be done. And it's not just with her, it's like just running the household. So like if groceries need to be shopped for whoever's off work that day, cool, please go shopping for us. If mom has a doctor's appointment, usually I'm the one that'll take her to her doctor's appointments, just so that we have a constant with the dementia doctor, with the mental state doctor. I try to have me at every single one of those appointments, just so that there's a constant, because they like to know, the different changes that have happened since the last time they've been seen also. So since I live here, we find it easier for me to just be the one in charge of those appointments. So that way, whenever I go, I can give them a full report and not have a lot of question about it. But then my siblings will do anything else, like any other appointments, or like I said, grocery shopping. If for some reason my mom is having like one of those days where she just does not want to shower, my sister will come over and help her get in the shower, and things like that.
Okay.
We've got a really good support system. It's very nice.
That is awesome. That's, some people, they're by themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. Definitely a lot of work.
A lot.
I have 6 siblings, so there's 7 of us, and it was still a lot of work. So
yeah, I'm sure. Wow, that's a lot of kids.
It's still a lot of work. So how do you handle the talking to the doctors, when they start to decline, when she starts to decline, how do you mentally handle all of that? What do you do to relieve stress?
Okay, so for a really long time, I didn't know what to do. I was pretty depressed for a very long time, because you just take all of that in, and inside you know that there's nothing you can do about it. But you wish that there was. So I ended up having to find myself a therapist I could talk to about that. A lot of the times that we would go to the doctor, they would say that dementia was something that could be that could be induced by stress. And as her kid, I always wonder if it's not something that as kids do to our parents that make them go crazy sometimes. And so for a really long time, I had a really hard time accepting that I can't change it. And so I ended up having to find myself a therapist. And I don't like pills. I don't like medical pills. I'm not a fan of it. I like natural medicine. So I'm not going to lie. I do use medical marijuana to help me cope and de-stress every once in a while. Most of the days I am okay with just, brushing it off and having okay days. Most of her days are great. Like, we don't have, we're not fighting with her all the time. And, we're not having to convince her to eat anymore like we used to have to. So most days now are good. But we still have those really bad days where I just wake up and I'm like, man, I really wish this would have been a really bad dream.
And talking about medicines and so forth, what type of medicine has the doctor prescribed for her? And And is she willing to take it?
Okay. So it took us a while to figure out medicines that would help stabilize her, because they had her on stuff for schizophrenia because of hallucinations. They had her on stuff for, oh crap, it's been so many. I used to have everything written down. They had tried so many different medications for her, and some of them were like scary because a lot of them have, like death as a sudden, whatever. And so for a really long time, we were just kind of changing it up every once in a while to see what would work and what wouldn't. We finally settled on something called Rexulti,
Okay.
and that seems to help stabilize her mood and her mental state really well. She has to take 2 doses, one in the morning, one at night. The one at night is a little bit bigger, helps her sleep and all that stuff. But she's on a medication for antidepressant. She's on the Rexulti. She's on other stuff for other medical issues that don't have anything to do with it. But I mean, the medications that we're finally on now, the Rexulti being one of them, is like what we found that works perfectly for her.
Okay. So they keep not anxious, so that really calms her down.
Correct. Yeah. If we miss a dose, you can tell like just one dose.
Oh.
It's insane how effective it is. She can go from like on a normal day that she takes her medication and everything's fine. She's still confused about some things, obviously, but not about everything.
Right.
And then if you miss a dose on accident, all of a sudden my dad's not her husband. She does not live here. She lives on a ranch. I have no idea where. She keeps asking me to take her to this ranch. I have no idea where it is.
Has she ever lived on a ranch? Do you know?
I think whenever she was really, really, really little, maybe, and they lived in Mexico, maybe they lived on some type of ranch or land or something, but not in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so then my dad has gotten to the point that on those days, he's finally starting to see the humor in it. I've felt the worst for my dad because they just celebrated their 50-year wedding anniversary this year in January.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, you've been with your partner for so long, and then it's like you still have them, but you don't, And so I've applauded my daddy for how great of an amazing, and he's just really good. He's just a really good guy. But anyways,
I'm assuming you all are taking care of him as well, because I know
absolutely, yes.
Just from everything that's going on is draining for him as well.
Exactly. Him and my mom used to make trips to Mexico every year. And since she's been sick, she hasn't been wanting to go. And so we still make sure that he gets to make his Mexico trips every year to see his family. He'll stay gone for 2-3 weeks at a time. So that way he gets like a full break, and then he comes back and, does his thing. But yeah, no, he's gotten to the point to where he's starting to see a little bit of humor in it. And the other day, my mom said something. I guess he tried to put his hand on her lap or something. And she was like, "Get your hands off of there." And he goes, "Well, why?" And she said, "Because those belong to my husband." And he goes, "Well, who's your husband?" And she was like, "Well, his name is whatever." She has a name for him, whatever. So anyways, so she says that's his name. And my dad goes, "Well, you better tell him to come pick you up because I'm tired of feeding you every day."
Oh my goodness, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. And that's funny because, it's like my mom would, do something similar, she would, I remember one time she was in the bed and we took her out the bed and she was sitting in the chair and I was downstairs with her with my other sister and she's telling me, "Why did you take my chair?" And I'm sitting around and said, okay, what chair? What chair? I don't have a chair. You didn't take a chair. Yes, you did. I mean, and she was really,
you took the chair.
Yeah, she was really adamant that I took that chair, but there was no chair. So I said, "Okay, I'm sorry." And I walked away because, a lot about this is that the disease is, is terrible. And, we as family members, we just take that on, but you have to get some humor in it. I mean,
You
because
have to.
because you're building memories, and these things you're gonna remember forever. And
Forever.
when I think back on my mom, I just think about those funny conversations that she's done told me I've done something, or because my mom was very feisty, and we always
Yeah.
say she had a good right hook, so you're ducking and dodging and all of that. So you got to kind of take each day by day. Some good
Yes.
days, some bad days.
You have to every single, almost sometimes even by the hour. Has it been a good hour? Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next. But yeah, no, it takes a lot as a caretaker to, and people don't understand it. And it's hard because not only are you taking care of a person who, you love, but you're also taking care of a person who you love who's not that person anymore. And it's different.
Mm-hmm. And then you think, they go from this dominant, loving parent to this little child, this little baby,
Literally.
because you're taking care of your parent. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to pick her up before, like to so moments where she doesn't want to do things that we need her to do. She will lay on her bed, but she'll lay on the very edge of it for some reason. And so we're always like, you got to scoot up on the bed. You got to scoot up. And she's like, no, I'm not moving. Blah, 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 blah. So my sister one day, she's like, all right. So she calls me. She's like, Stephanie, come in here. So I go in there and I picked her up, like a child, and I scooted her into her bed. And the whole time she's like, oh my God, you got to put me down. You can't, you're going to drop me. You're going to drop me. And I'm like, well, if you would just move.
you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
You got to do what you got to
Have
do.
to do it.
But another thing I wanted to say also, whenever she's having those bad days that you are, whenever we just can't get her to calm down, or she's had her medication, it's just one of those really bad days. We use medical marijuana tinctures on her. They're just little droplets. We put them under her tongue, like 1 or 2 maybe. It'll help her focus. It'll help her get her mood better. Like it'll stabilize her mood. And on the days that she will not eat, she'll eat those days if we give her those tinctures.
I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will.
She will. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Hopefully, if anybody is watching that is having an issue getting your parent or your loved one or whoever to eat something today, just keep an open mind. Ask the doctor about it for sure. We did. We made sure to include our doctor in all of our decisions that it comes with my mom. But definitely keep an open mind and try that. Go to your nearest friendly pot store, get yourself a tincture or some gummies. They also have suckers that you can give them, but any of that stuff, and it'll help most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it will.
Okay. So how has her illness affected because you said you're in school.
Yes.
Has that affected your school at all? Do you have to miss school? And how do you handle that?
So I have online classes. So most of the time, no. Although for the first couple of years it did. I ended up having to not necessarily drop out of classes, but I did reduce my course load by probably about 5 classes each semester, just because I wanted to be able to focus on her and her medical appointments. And I didn't want to not be able to give my schooling the focus and attention it needed as well. So I just decided to backtrack a little bit on the schooling so that I could focus on her until we could get her figured out and diagnosed and all of that. And then once everything was done, I was able to jump back in. And that's another thing that my siblings are so gracious about, is that whenever all of this started happening, I was like, I'm going to have to drop out of school. And they were like, no, you're not. You're just going to have to take it a little slower, but you're not leaving school. Like, that's not happening. So it's been a blessing to have such good and supportive siblings and family members.
Okay. Okay. And what do you all ever get a chance to go away? Let's say, for instance, I know your dad is always there, but do you all get a chance to go away to take a breather, maybe for a weekend, or are you
Oh
all
yeah.
very staying around? Okay.
Oh yeah, we all definitely take our times. My sister lives a town away. My brothers live in the same town as us. So I mean, other than work, they're always busy, doing stuff. And we do take our own times. So like this summer, I'll probably take a week or a weekend and take my son to St. Louis and watch a Dodgers game or something. We did that last year. But whatever we end up doing, it ends up being somewhat local, at least for me anyways. I end up going anywhere local. So like St. Louis is probably the farthest I've gone so far, and it's 4 hours away. And we spent the entire weekend just going to different restaurants and watching the Dodgers game. We lost that game. I was really sad about it, but we won that series. Okay. And then I don't know. It's just, we take time for ourselves. We make sure that we all get our own time. But we also make sure everything's taken care of at the same time.
Okay. So we have 3 minutes left. What would you, if you had to say something to other caregivers of their parents, what would you say to them? You have your opportunity to say it to them right now.
I want to tell you that you are a very strong individual and that nobody can do what you can do. And to remember to just be patient. They're going to test you and they're going to give you the hardest time of your life, but it's going to be worth it. It has been. And just remember that you love them, even though they want to make you tear your hair out sometimes. Remember to keep some time for yourself. If you get frustrated, walk away. Go to your room, do something, scream into a pillow, whatever you need to do. Just leave for 5 seconds is all you need to yourself to scream. And then come back with a new attitude. Take your days. Definitely take some time for yourself, for sure. Don't be there every single day. Don't be a martyr. If people are offering you help, please, please, please take the help every chance you get, because dementia is not something that we can do by ourselves. And it's not something we should do by ourselves.
No, I totally agree with you. And I would add to, when you're going to get frustrated, like you said, remember it's the disease.
It's the disease.
The disease. So, and just change your mindset. You got to change your mindset a bit. This is my mom. This is my dad. This is my husband. My child, if necessary. And I love them, and I'm going to do whatever I can to take care of them. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. And everyone,
I hope that you have the best success with this podcast. It's been needed. Thank you so much for doing it.
I appreciate it. Good night, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.